the Center for Economic Sustainability and Entrepreneur Finance. So let's make it short, called CSAT. So I didn't name this center, that's why it's so long. I wish that I can make it shorter. So this is I have been personally working across several schools, universities in Hong Kong, and this is, to my knowledge, the very first research center in Hong Kong that is specifically related to ESG and green finance in Hong Kong. And so our job is to invite the best scholars in ESG and green finance. Like today we have Dr. Lisa Sun, and we have Dr. Chi Man Yit. And so we invite this successful young scholar in ESG to our center for some research collaboration. And we also try to connect academic people with the professional practitioner. Like today we have Melissa and Alice from the real world, or the other way around, for better knowledge sharing about your insight on ESG. And our center has been doing this, delivered the past seminar, four of them successfully during the 2019, but because of the COVID, we have to stop for almost 2 years. So we are very happy that today we successfully making our 5th past seminar, and we are going to host many more during the coming months and the coming 2 years. And today we are glad to have Dr. Lisa Sun to represent the academic scholars to talk about the climate change and environmental risk from the academic point of view. And we also have our ES expert from economic perspective, Dr. Chi Man Yit, to moderate all the sessions and the discussions. And of course, we are super glad to have 2 outstanding speakers, including Melissa Fang, the partner from Deloitte, China, and also the managing director of the DBS Bank, Alex Chong, for sharing your great insight about ESG and the real practice in the practitioner world about the climate change and green finance or green bond. And so, Lemon, do you have anything to add before we start?
No, nothing to add. I mean, maybe a very quick intro for the speakers themselves, our guest speakers, and thanks again for taking time. So maybe we'll start with Melissa. So Melissa is my former colleague, partner at Deloitte. She is the risk advisory partner, spearheads Deloitte's ESG advisory service, and is also the sustainability leader here in Hong Kong. So welcome, Melissa. Melissa has 20 years of experience. She covers a lot of industries, ranging from energy and resources, hospitality, manufacturing, real estate, and telecom. And she was part of she'll talk today with us about the impact of TCFD, Task Force on Climate Change, financial disclosures in one particular industry, so we can go a bit more in depth into real estate. So thanks for that. And we're very happy to have Alex Cheung. Alex Cheung is a banking veteran in Hong Kong, currently the managing director and head of institutional banking of DBS in Hong Kong. And prior to that, he brings with him a lot of experience from international banks like Citibank, Bank of America, and ABN AMRO, where I also worked. And also interesting to mention, DBS is really a pioneer in the ESG area. And I've seen a lot of the way that they adopt a holistic sustainability agenda. So really a number of movers and shakers with us here today. So a warm welcome, Alex and Melissa. And I leave it to Lisa to start with her presentation. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Thank you, Albert and Lemon. Let me share. Okay, thanks for the kind introduction. I'm glad to let me wait a bit. Okay. I'm glad to have this opportunity to share some knowledge and insight in green finance. Green finance is a very hot topic and becoming more and more important under the concept of the sustainable development. I believe all of you should have heard green finance at some times. The big background behind the development of green finance is related to the severe environmental challenges we are facing. And one of the most important, most challengeable issues is climate change. So in today's talk, I will firstly introduce the overall background of green finance and with a specific focus on climate change. Then I will discuss how the climate change and other environmental challenges can affect the financial market. Finally, I want to share how can we mitigate such environmental challenges through the financing pathways. So in this part, I will introduce several major instruments of green finance, focusing on green bonds and also the green loans. So this is the outline of my talk. When we talk about the development of green finance, we have to mention the global climate change at first. According to the NASA observation, the global climate change, you can see the figure. There is about 1 degree increase in the global average surface temperature relative to the pre-industrial era baseline. So this already have 1.2 degree increase in the average temperature. You may think that the 1 degree increase is quite small in number, but in fact, it means a significant increase in the cumulative heat. And such extra heat is driving more and more severe and visible negative impacts on the whole society and the economy. There are many extreme events associated with the climate change around us recently. For example, there is a 38 degree temperature record in the Arctic circle in this year. So very high. So it's beyond our image. And also, there are already thousands died due to the heat wave in North America. So, and this heat wave, we cannot see the end. So it's all the very extreme events recently related to the climate change. So to avoid the potential catastrophic and irreversible climate changes, in 2015, the Brazil, South Africa, India, China, and the United States have drafted make a climate change agreement. This they have a draft. We call it the Paris Agreement. And in this agreement, about almost 200 countries have applied to reduce the greenhouse gases emission. So this is a international level agreement to limit the global warming to well below the 2 degrees. So this is a common scientific target about well below the 2 degrees. But to achieve such reduction plan is not easy. It needs the force from financial market. That is to make finance flows consistent with a pathway towards the low carbon emissions and the climate resilient development. The importance of such green finance is emphasized at the G20 Hangzhou Summit in 2016. In this summit, the global leaders reached agreement to scale up the green finance for the first time. So this agreement from the international level, it's a very high level. But from 2016 to now, 5 years have gone. Do we walk enough towards the 2 degree target set in the Paris Agreement? The answer is no. According to the recent emission report by the United Nations Environmental Program, we call the UNEP, about 95% 5% of the current national plan are insufficient to meet the goal of keeping global warming within 2 degrees. Until 2013, the more than the current reduction plan will result in 13 billion to 15 billion tons emission gap. If we keep the global warming well below the 2 degrees in this century. So it's a large emission gap. So this large emission gap to call for more aggressive and ambitious reduction plan from each national government. Otherwise, we are less likely to achieve the within 2 degree target, resulting in irreversible environmental disaster. So it's urgent to reduce carbon emission globally and achieve net zero emissions. That is because the carbon neutrality. The United Union Secretary claimed the carbon neutrality by 2050 is the world's most urgent mission. The many countries have realized its urgency. By now, about 70% of the world economy have committed to adopt more aggressive carbon reduction activities and achieve net zero emission by around the middle of this century, including the European Union, the United Kingdom, the China, but the China just claimed to achieve the net zero by 2060, and the United States. The United States just we didn't see the formal document. It's just a verbal.
Wow, you got it.
It's just a verbal claim. And other around 100 countries. It's good to see the global leader have realized the potential huge harm of climate change and make such strong commitment. But the only commitment is not enough. The most important question faced by the government regulator is how to effectively motivate companies and the general public to take the carbon reduction activities. So far, green financing is commonly recognized as an efficient pathway. In general, we think the funding of the effort to confront the global environmental challenge is what we can broadly refer to as the green finance. A green finance is usually recognized within some framework. That framework can be international, regional, and national or subnational, such as the one very common international framework is the sustainable development goals we call SDGs. The SDGs have according to the SDGs framework, the green finance is an emerging asset class and can work as a strong bridge to the goals of the sustainable development goals. They have 17 goals involving environmental goals, the social goals, and the economic goals, and other goals. Financing projects with benefits to one or two or more sustainable development goals can be broadly classified as a sustainable finance. But among them, green finance specifically targets on environmental goals, including the climate change mitigation, climate change adaptation, and other environmental goals, such as reducing pollution and protecting biodiversity. Here, you might be confused about what is climate change mitigation and what is climate change adaptation. Shortly speaking, climate change mitigation means avoiding and reducing emissions of the greenhouse gases into the atmosphere to prevent the planet from warming to more extreme temperature. This is a target to reduce the emission of the greenhouse gases. But climate change adaptation is different. It means changing our behavior, system, and in some cases, the ways of life to protect our family, our economies, and the living environment from the impact of climate change. So this part is given the global warming that help us to better adapt the global warming impact. For example, investing on ensuring infrastructure can help us withstand more extreme weather. This belongs to the climate change adaptation investment. If the funding flowed to the project with benefit on climate change mitigation or climate change adaptation, then we can further classify it as climate finance. So the climate finance is the subset of green finance, and green finance is a subset of the sustainable finance. So it's an overall position of green finance fitting into the sustainable finance. And the development of the green finance is mainly driven by the growing acceptance of the materiality of climate change at all levels of the economy. To facilitate your understanding, I provide some examples and academic research to explain how climate change and other environmental issues can affect the financial market through such as the physical risk and transition risk. Okay, let's look at the example. The first example is about climate change and stranded ice sites. Stranded ice sites are the ice sites that have suffered from unexpected or premature write-down, devaluation, or conversion to liabilities. You might feel hard to understand these accounting terminologies. To be simple, you can just suppose that stranded ice site means ice site with unusual value reduction. Here, in relation to climate change, a stranded ice site refers to the ice sites that turn out to be worse than expected due to the changes associated with the energy transition, because the whole society looks to restrict global warming to well below 2 degrees and switch to cleaning energies. So the traditional, the carbon-intensive energies will be downplayed. The examples can be the coal mines, and petroleum, and other hydrocarbon reserves. But stranded ice sites not only refer to the natural resources I mentioned before, it also refers to other ice sites related to the natural resources exploration, production, and distribution. For example, in the oil and gas industry, the stranded ice site also includes the exploration and development ice sites such as the drilling rigs, and also includes the production and processing facilities like the processing terminals. And the distribution infrastructure, for example, the pipelines, the tankers, they are stranded because of the climate change. Now I want to raise a very simple question for all of you to think about. Do you agree that the climate change always reduce asset value of farms? So let's just do a simple polling. If you agree that climate change always reduce the asset value of firms, please just raise your hand. So let me count. So anyone think it's always hurt to the firm value? Okay, the first polling is about the attendance. So just finish the attendance first. Okay. Okay, all the attendance record is finished. Sorry. So, I didn't see any attendance, any people to raise the hand. So I think all you think you don't agree this argument. Okay, yeah, your source is correct. Now this argument is not correct. Actually, the climate change might benefit some industry, such as the electric car industry. One typical example is Tesla. The Tesla can obtain large financial benefit from the climate change. Tesla had gained a large amount of the revenue from the regulatory carbon credits. So carbon credit is a permit that allows the holder or the company to emit a certain amount of the carbon dioxide or other greenhouse gases over a period of time. So we all know that Tesla only produce electric cars, so they can obtain many carbon credits from the regulator and sell this credit to other companies with intensive carbon emission for profit. So you can see this part's revenue is exactly the byproduct of the national fight for climate change. Without the threat from climate change, the regulator will not make an effort to fight against climate change by provide some carbon credit to cite such system to motivate the company to reduce their carbon emission and give some award for the carbon reducing activities. So this is just the byproduct of the national fight for climate change. And this part profit for Tesla is non-trivial. By the end of this year, this part's revenue will reach up to $2 billion. Let me give you a benchmark. In 2020, Tesla's total profit for the whole year is only $721 million. So without the revenue from carbon credit sales, Tesla will get negative profit. In other words, its climate change makes Tesla unique and profitable. So you can see how climate change benefits Tesla and such other electric car industry. Okay, this is my first example. Besides affecting the asset value in energy industry, climate change can also affect stock price in food sectors through the physical risk. Climate science have found that the trend towards global warming exacerbates the risk of the drought, the increased risk of the droughts, the future risk. And such increasing drought can reduce the agricultural production and increase the supply risk of the food companies. So climate change can induce physical risk for agriculture industry. So given this potential risk induced by climate change, investors might discount the stock price of the food sectors they invest. One influential academic paper in testing this argument is Hong et al.'s recent paper published in the Journal of Economic Metrics. In their paper, they investigate whether the price of food stocks efficiently discount this risk. Specifically, they use an international sighting, covering about 31 countries with public traded food companies. And they rank these countries each year based on their long-term trend toward jobs. And they found the high job trend ranking for a country forecasts relative poor profit growth for food company in that country and the relative poor stock return in that country. And this return predictability is consistent with the food stock price underreacting to climate change risk. That means investors do not fully incorporate such long-run climate risk into current stock price. So this is my second example involving the food sector. And besides affecting the stock price of food sectors, climate change might also affect the real estate price in coastal regions because of the potential physical risk from sea level increase and the increased occurrence of the hurricane or flood. According to the Badov et al. Paper published in the Review of Financial Studies, climate change indeed matters in pricing coastal real estate, but it only matters when the potential consumers believe in such climate risk. Empirically, in this paper, they found the houses that are projected to be underwater in believer neighborhoods sell at a discount, but this house do not discount in unbeliever neighborhoods. It suggests that the real estate valuation reflects the different belief among the general population about the long-run climate change risk. Different people have different belief about such the long-run risk induced by the climate change. Some believe, some do not believe. So when you look at the financial impact of the climate change, you will see many discretion in terms of the people's belief. Besides these three examples, there are other academic evidence on the economic impact of climate change and environmental degradation. I'm not going to introduce them one by one, but basically, I hope these three examples can give you some sense about how environmental challenge will affect financial market and our economies. As more and more people realize the materiality of climate change in affecting the whole economy, green finance becomes more and more demanding. So that's why we cite the growing acceptance of the materiality of climate change is an important driver of green finance in my prior slide. Another important driver of the green finance development is the strong commitment by national, international framework, such as the Paris Agreement in 2015 and the major stock exchange worldwide. And these national and international frameworks, numerous public and private sector projects have been launched for the transition to a low carbon future. In the following slides, I will introduce what kind of the financing instrument we can use to finance these projects that mitigate environmental challenges. Now here I will introduce green bonds, transition bonds, green loans, and sustainability linked loans if I have time. Okay, let's start on the financial instrument in green finance. I focus on these four types of the financing instrument because they are dominant in green finance market. From this figure, you can see the green bond, the global green finance market growing over time. And they dominate by the green bonds. Now here you may confuse why I specifically just focus on debt market. The green finance should be include both equity market and the debt market. Now here I want to give you illustrate a bit. So far, green finance, global green finance mainly come from debt market rather than the equity market. In current equity market, funds specifically targeting on environmental metrics are quite few. In practice, they usually just take environmental, social, and corporate governance as a whole into their decision process, so-called ESG investing in equity market. So it's quite hard to differentiate whether and to what extent such ESG funds belong to green finance. So currently, green finance, we mainly refer to the green debt, including the bond and the loans. Okay, so this is a brief introduction about the composition of the global green finance. For green bonds, there are more than 20 stock exchanges dedicated to green bonds since 2015, including many large stock exchanges, such as the London Stock Exchange, the Shanghai Stock Exchange, and the Hong Kong and Singapore Stock Exchange. We all know stock exchanges play a vital role in providing market access. So this dedicated green bond list in this specific stock exchange have been crucial in showcasing green bonds and facilitates the development of green bond market greatly. Green bonds enable capital raising and investment for new and existing projects with environmental benefits. By definition, they are specifically labeled to be used for climate and environmental projects, and typically found towards the large-scale, capital-intensive green infrastructure projects that can be repaid from steady, modest, and long-term cash flow. And their issuance and post-issuance disclosure usually follow green bond principles, so-called the GBP. The green bond principles are voluntary process guidance. They recommend the transparency and promote integrity in the development of the green bond market. And the GBP usually cover 4 core contents. The first one is related to the use of the proceeds. Under the principle, a business will need to declare which of the eligible green project categories it belongs to and the corresponding environmental benefits. So it's about the use of the proceeds to fit into the the green project categories. And the second one is related to the process for the project valuation and selection. Under this principle, an issuer will need to determine and communicate to investor about the selection process and determine how the project fit within the eligible green project categories. That means the issuer should tell investor why the project can achieve environmental benefit and fall into the green project categories. And the third principle is related to the management of proceeds. It's about accounting. Under the principle, the proceeds should be segregated or tracked in accounting. So as long as the green bond remain outstanding, the balance of this tracked proceeds should be periodically adjusted to match allocation to eligible green projects during the period. So the use of the proceeds is tractable and matched. It's related to the accounting system. And the last one is about the post-issuance of reporting. The use of proceeds should be reported at least annually to investor and timely update with any material development to keep transparent for your investor. Overall, this principle benefit both the issuers and the investors. For issuers, they provide guidance and standards about the key components involving the issuing a credible green bond. For investor, they help investor to by ensuring the availability of information necessary to value the environmental impact of their green bond investment. They protect investor from the agency issue and the waste of the money, their money. Okay, after knowing the definition and the principle of green bonds, the following question is what's the economic incentive for issuing a green bond? Besides the ask value from being environmentally responsible, green bonds also offer economic benefit for issuers through 3 ways. And the first way is through the tax credit. That is, bond investors receive tax credits instead of the interest payment. The issuer don't have to pay interest to about their green bond issuance. So the issuer's financing cost through green bond will be lower than a conventional bond. So this is the first economic incentive. The second way is through the direct subsidy. That is, bond issuers receive cash rebates from the government to subsidize their net interest payment. For this type of green bond, the government directly shares some costs for the bond issuance. And the third one is through the tax exemption. But this tax exemption is not applied to the issuer, but is applied to the investee. And this type of green bond, the bond investor do not have to pay income tax on the interest from their green bond investment. And this tax benefit for investor allow investors to accept a lower interest rate from the bond issuer. So this is another economic incentive for bond issuers. Given this economic benefits and the regulatory pressure from the international national framework and stock exchange I mentioned before, the green bond market increased dramatically in past decade. Let me briefly introduce the timeline and to give you an overall picture. The first green bond was issued by the European Investment Bank in 2007 with a very small size, and this bond was labeled as a climate awareness bond. And this is followed by a similar issuance by the World Bank in 2008. But the green bond market is quite small at that time. Before 2016, the size of the green bond issuance is usually less than $1 billion. But starting from the 2013, the green bond market speed up. In 2013, the first sizable corporate green bond was issued with a total amount of about 1.4 billion euros. And in 1 year later, in 2014, the first version of the green bond principle was published. And in July, in the same year, S&P Dow Jones Green Bond Index was launched. They are the milestone of the green bond development. Since then, an increasing number of the green labeled projects have been created. And until 2017, the size of the green bond had reached up to about 160 billion US dollars. And more important, the size of the green bond market increasing continuously. In 2019, global green bond issuance has reached up to about 260 billion US dollars, making a new global record. And the total issuance amount is up. New issuance amount is up by 50% compared with the amount in last year, in 2018, based on the statistics climate bonds initiative. So this is NGOs collecting the information about green bonds. And from this figure, you can clearly see in 2019, the issuance volume is mainly driven by the European, this part, European market. And this accounts for about 45% of the global issuance. This is followed by the green part, the Asia Pacific, and the North America, the blue one, dark blue one. And they with a share about 25% contribution and 20-30% contribution is quite similar. And compared with last year, the total amount of green bond issued by the European countries increased by about 75%. Compare here, they are about 75% increase over these years. So European market is the largest contributor in green bond new issuance recently. But in terms of the the contribution from single country, the United States, the China, and France are the top 3 contributors. Together, they account for about 44% of the global new issuance in 2019. So if you want to invest on green bond, the European countries, United States, China, and France should offer you a more suitable choice. Besides the total amount, you may also want to know where this green capital flow to. Taking the green bond proceeds allocation in 2019 as an example, the energy and building sectors, 31% and about 30%. They are the biggest user. And following these 2 users, the transportation sector is the 3rd one. They contribute about 20% shares. But other sectors such as the water waste, land use, together just account for about 20%. It's still not very large. So you can see energy and building remain the largest user of the global green bond proceeds. So this is about the green capital flow, their allocation. The global market, green finance market might be a bit far away from your daily life. So starting from this slide, I will talk more about the Hong Kong green bond market. Actually, Hong Kong is rethinking the future of finance and making effort to develop the sustainable and green economics across Asia as well. The Hong Kong government is urgently pushing green finance. And the Hong Kong Exchange chairman, Laura, they treat green finance as a cornerstone of future global sustainability and a powerful engine of the economic and social growth. As one important financial hub, Hong Kong will embrace green finance for sure. Recently, Hong Kong exchange market established a specific sustainable and green exchange. This one, when you log in this link, you will see this page. This new established specific targeting on sustainable and green product. This is a great effort to scale up green finance in Hong Kong. In this stock exchange, you can find the green bonds. Like this, you can find the list about the green bonds. Here you can select the issued and the stock code, and also the type. And also, besides the green bond, you also can find the social bonds, sustainable bond, and make investment on them. If you click a bond, for example, the green bond issued by the MTR, you can see this information, and including the type, the currency, the code, identity code, the leasing date, maturity, and also the standards, the principle they followed, and the mandatory filing about the new insurance, the offering filing, and also other voluntary materials such as the external review report or assurance about conducted by the other third party, usually the agent, the sustainable related rating agency. And this assurance report or review report will give some information about whether and how this green bond can fit into the green project categories, and to offer what kind of environmental benefits. And also, they may include the post-issuance report. This report will give you investor information about the use of the proceeds and the achieved financial environmental benefits, and how this the proceed allocation have matched to the environmental matrix and the framework they followed. This all the information related to this green bond you can find. It's very useful. So you can see the sustainable and green exchange make green bonds more silent and transparent. This can facilitate the investment of investors, and also facilitate the issued, because they attract more investors and trust on the green bond they issued, and give issuers more chance to get sufficient funding from the external investors. Although green bond market is quite large and important, academic research about the green bond market is still limited and show puzzling funding. For example, recently there are two academic papers examining the greening. That is, look at whether green bond investors are willing to sacrifice their financial profit for environmental benefit. For example, the first paper is conducted by the Flammer. It focuses on the corporate green bonds, and this paper published in the Journal of Financial Economics. And they found the investors respond positive to the issuance of the corporate green bond. So this finding consistent with a signaling argument. That is, by issuing green bonds, the company credibly signal their commitment towards the environment, and investment, and investors provide additional reward about their environmental efforts. So this is suggests a positive greening. However, another paper is just, the following this paper is published in same year, conducted by the Lacker and the Weiss. It's published in the Journal of Accounting Economics. They focus on the municipal green bond. And these municipal bonds can allow them to compare same issuers and on same time, but the premium between green bond and non-green bond. So based on this citing, we found the investor identically priced the green and non-green municipal bond issued by the same municipal government on same day. So this the finding suggests investors appear entirely unwilling to forego their financial wealth to invest in the environmental sustainable project. So this funding resulting in a puzzling, they were puzzled about the agreement, whether the investor indeed would like to sacrifice their financial benefit in order to achieve the environmental benefit. It's still a question. And to call for more research to explore these puzzles and to understand what's the underlying drivers about this difference, and what factors can explain the discretion about the green bond premium, such as the disclosure difference I have mentioned in last slides. The green bond have many voluntary materials issued. For this voluntary reporting, there is a large discretion across different green bonds. Some just issue the mandatory filing, and some other bonds, they provide all the post-issuance reporting and third-party certification assurance. So whether that transparency and the reporting issue can explain this puzzle, it's also an interesting question to explore. Okay, so in last slide, we see green bonds that the corporate governance as an issue. But in this slide, I will see another kind of the green bond with government as issues. We call it as sovereign green bond. The green bond are a key instrument for government to raise capital to implement infrastructure plan in line with the national climate targets they claimed. So under pressure to achieve their targets as cited in the Paris Agreement and SDGs, they have strong incentive to issue sovereign green bonds. And such issuance also provide a strong signal of the country's commitment to low carbon economy, have bring down the cost of the capital for green projects by attracting new investors and mobilize provide capital towards sustainable development. From this map, you can clearly see China, including Hong Kong, United States, and some European countries issued more than 10 billion US dollars sovereign green bond. So it's a large amount. So it's all these countries are the major contributor of the sovereign green bond market. There is another special type of green bond. And besides the green bond, transition bond is also one kind of the emerging financial instrument in green finance. Transitioning issuers are issuers who are transition pathway to Paris Agreement targets and wish to raise funds in order to help them achieve the emission reduction targets. The issuers of green bond and transition bond are usually quite different. The green bond issuers are often from the clean energy industry or other green industry who have already on their way to transformation into the low carbon economy. But the transition bond issuers focus on hard to abate sectors or carbon intensive sectors such as the coal industry. In fact, such sectors account for a significant proportion of total emissions and will form the biggest piece of the puzzle when it comes to reducing greenhouse gases emission. So providing financing for such sectors are important to achieve the carbon emission reduction goals at a global level. So this is why the European Commissions, they revised their European Green Deal by adding financing transition and leave no one behind into the guidance for transforming the EU economy for sustainable future. I expect the transition bonds will become more and more popular because they capture large amounts of the greenhouse emission in the total pie. But we should realize the transition bonds suffer from more concern about the potential for greenwashing. So in this, for transition bond, we call it the transition washing. This is because the transition, in the transition space, managers have more room to manipulate their environmental performance and find the excuses on the failure of their green processes. To mitigate such concern, the ICMA Climate Transition Finance Handbook goes a long way towards providing the standardization and the transparency to the market. This handbook lists the guidance on the issues climate transition strategy and the governance and how business model environmental materiality, and also make climate change strategy to be science-based, including the targets and the pathway and implementing transparency. So this guidance in turn gave issuers in carbon-intensive sectors more opportunity to raise finance to support their climate transition strategy in a credible way. So otherwise, if the lack of transparency and standardized process, the investor will concern much about the greenwashing and be reluctant to invest on the transition bond. So such guidance is quite important to facilitate the growth of the transition bonds. Hopefully the transition bonds can be growth quickly to gain more chance about the carbon intensive sectors. And another common instrument of the green finance is loans labeled as green, including green loans and sustainable linked loans. The green loans is definitely defined as any type of loan instrument made available exclusively to finance or refinance new and existing eligible green projects. And similar to the green bonds, the green loans must align with the four core components of the green loan principle. So this principle, similar to the green bond, also includes the four contents related to the use of the process for project evaluation, selection, management of the process, and the reporting. I will not mention them again. But the sustainable linked loans are different from green loans in terms of the use of the process. The process of sustainability linked loans do not need to be allocated exclusively to green projects. Instead, the pricing of the sustainability linked loans is tied to the borrower's performance against a certain predetermined sustainability performance targets. So this one has stricter restriction in definition. The investment should exclusively to green project, eligible green project. But for the sustainability-linked loans, it's loosened this restriction, but it's tied the loan interest with the performance that predetermined by the borrower related to the sustainability performance. And this performance target can be internal or external. If the target is internal, it can be the reduction in greenhouse gases emission, the improvements in energy efficiency. If they are external, they can be attaining to a certain sustainability rating from external reviewer, such as the ESG rating provided by the third-party rating agency. So it's targeted to the third-party provide performance target. Okay, so green loans and sustainability-linked loans are two different products. If you are borrowers, how do you choose between these two types of loans? To be honest, there is no single answer to answer such question, but there are some common rules to follow. Usually, if the fundamental purpose of the loan is to finance some clearly identified green project, and in this project, the loan money can be easily tracked, then I think the green loan may be a most suitable option. But if the borrower is just to look at, plan to improve the overall sustainability profile and cannot easily track proceeds, then I think the sustainable linked loans may be the most proper option. So one important advantage of the sustainable linked loan is that they can open the sustainable loan market to companies in a wider variety of sectors, such as they can open access to the sectors which may not easily track the process, and also open access to smaller companies that have not been able to overcome the barriers to entry of the green loan or green bond insurance market. So the choice of the green finance instruments depends on the project nature, the purpose, and the financial the firm's characteristics. You need to specific analysis before making the investment choice. So that's all my sharing about today's talk. Thanks for your interest and attention.
Okay, so let's now go to Melissa.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. I'm Melissa Fong, partner of Deloitte Risk Advisory. And basically, as mentioned by Ledman, I specialize in doing ESG or climate and sustainability work. And in my past experience, I helped real estate and other industries, companies to do some ESG reporting work and also advise on sustainability strategy and governance as well. So today my topic is about the Task Force on Climate Change Financial Disclosures. In short, it is TCFD. And today I will focus talking about the usage of TCFD in the real estate industry. So before jumping into what is TCFD, I would like to highlight that SFC also set up a strategic framework for green and sustainable finance. They say that as a priority to enhance listed companies' reporting of environmental information, emphasizing climate-related disclosure, taking into account the mainland's policy direction to target mandatory environmental disclosure by 2020 and aiming to align with the TCFD recommendations. Actually, the use of TCFD is not only emphasized by SFC. In the past years, Hong Kong regulators such as the HKMA, SFC, Hong Kong Stock Exchange, the Insurance Authority also set up a steering group emphasizing that the use of TCFD in the financial industry sector. So, and in the long run, we will anticipate that banks, fund managers, and insurance companies will also make reference to TCFD to make their climate change disclosures. So why for TCFD is actually emphasized on climate change. Why climate change is so important for us? As you can see here, it's a World Economic Forum survey or risk report in 2020. As you can see, the top 10 risks in terms of likelihood and also the top 10 risks in terms of impact are all related to climate change. For example, you can see extreme weather, climate action failure, natural disasters, biodiversity loss, human-made environmental disasters. These are the top 10 risks rated by different companies in the world. And our traditional risk, such as financial risk, anti-corruption, etc., actually are rating quite low. So what is the implication of that is more and more companies and also the general public are more concerned about the climate risk that will impact our business and also our living environment. So when we talk about the TCFD, TCFD is aimed to promote more informed investment, credit, and insurance underwriting decisions to enable stakeholders to understand better the concentrations of carbon-related assets in the financial sector and the financial system's exposures to climate-related risk. Under the TCFD framework, there are four pillars. The first one is about governance. In this pillar, the emphasis is for the organizations to set up governance mechanism around to manage climate-related risk and opportunities. So, for example, it is encouraged that organizations should set up some kind of like sustainability committee at the board level, or even some sustainability working groups at the management level to monitor the climate risk development relating to its business. Besides monitoring of the risk, it also emphasizing on reporting the risk to the board and also to the management level. And the second pillar is about strategy. It is how to incorporate ESG or climate-related risk into the risk management framework of an organization. For example, in Hong Kong, under the Hong Kong listing rules, the corporate governance code, the Hong Kong listed companies are required to set up the risk management process. And then in order to manage the ESG related risk, the companies also need to set up strategies relating to how to manage the ESG risk as well. So very often, as you can see in the market, different companies are using the Sustainable Development Goals. That is what we call the SDG, to incorporate the ESG related strategy into their business strategies. For the Sustainable Development Goals, there are 17 goals in total, but actually for each company, they do not need to select all the 17 goals. They can select some of the goals that is related to their business. For example, environmental protection, social well-being, those are the most common goals selected by different companies. And in terms of risk management, it is also about the incorporation of the ESG risk management into the risk management mechanism of each company. The risk management process, including the identification, assessment, management, and also evaluation of the climate-related risk. Actually, for the Hong Kong listed companies, they can just, every year they need to do risk assessment at the enterprise level. So what we advise them to do is to incorporate ESG into their existing enterprise risk management framework. And the last pillar is called matrix and targets. For matrix and targets, it is just like the KPI disclosed in the ESG reports that all of you should have read through. For matrix and targets, actually, it is classified by industry. So because today we will more concentrate on talking about real estate industry, we will also have a more deep dive into the matrices and targets of the real estate industries. So for TCFD, before I will talk about some taxonomy regarding the TCFD framework. As mentioned by Professor previously, there is transition risk, physical risk as well. When we talk about transition risk, it is about that whether there is any the risk relating to the policy and regulatory changes in the particular industries. For example, for real estate industries, if there is any policy changes, environmental policy changes relating to the carbon emission and also the wastage management, and this will also affect the real estate industries, and they need to change their operations and to adapt to the new policies. So this is also a kind of transition. And another example is about technology. For example, there's a new technology in construction and also in the say, for example, the manufacturing of raw materials of the real estate industries. This is also the real estate companies also need to adapt to this kind of new technology. This also create a transition risk as well. And the other one is for the market. As you can see, the general public or the customers are emphasizing more and more about the green buildings and the green environment produced by the real estate industries. In order to adapt to the new market trends, there's also a transition risk incurred by the real estate companies as well, because they need to maybe change the design of the buildings, change of the use of materials in order to adapt to the new market trends. And the other one is about reputation. Reputation is one also key factor as well. For example, if there is a significant violation of the policies, environmental policies, this will also lead to a reputation damage to the companies as well. So in terms of physical risk, it is more about the physical location of the real estate development project sites. For example, whether that development projects is subject to coastal risk. Actually, coastal risk is also quite important for Hong Kong as well. And also flooding is another risk. And also if the development project is near to the forest, it is also subject to forest fire as well. So in terms of physical risk, the real estate developers also need to handle or mitigate this risk. And for TCFD framework, it is a transformation of the transition risk and physical risk impact into financial impact, and which is relating to the income statement or balance sheet elements, such as revenues, expenditures, assets, liabilities, and capital. So the costs from environmental or climate-related events have been identified as universal concerns will come back into the investor's portfolio as risk premium, taxes, inflated input prices, and also physical costs, as I mentioned. Also, social concerns such as poverty and inequality can also lead to social and political unrest and instability. This can also create business risk to different industries as well. And also the macro, financial, or even systematic risks that may materialize from the failure of corporations to achieve the SDGs will have major negative consequences for financial returns. So when we talk about the financial impact of the climate-related risk, there are 4 general categories, as I mentioned, such as revenues, expenditures, assets, liabilities, capital, and financing. On the graph at the right-hand side, you can see that for different industries, there can be applicable to these 4 categories, such as, for example, for real estate management and development, it applies to all these 4 categories, that is revenues, expenditure, assets and liabilities, and also capital and financing. So if you read through the TCFD guideline, you will have a very detailed explanations for each industries relating to these 4 general categories. And for property sector, transition risk may arise from all these 4 categories. And for example, larger shift in asset values, higher cost of operation, violation of ESG related laws and regulations, and also resulting fines as well. And also it requires the property companies to develop a robust strategy that is integrated into the overall business strategy. While the strategy must retain a level of flexibility, it must also be actionable and measurable. So here is a TCFD 2020 status report. As you can see that there are already over 1,500 organization supporters since TCFD recommendations were published back in 2017. Energy companies and also materials and buildings companies are leading on disclosure. For energy companies, there are about 40% of the energy companies using TCFD framework as disclosure framework. And about 30% of the materials and buildings companies are using TCFD as well in the fiscal year of 2019. And on the right-hand side, as you can see that from materials and building review results that in terms of governance management roles, about 20 to 30% of the companies will disclose this governance pillar in the TCFD disclosures. And in terms of strategy, most of the companies will disclose risks and opportunities, impact on organizations. And in terms of risk management, it is a little bit lower than the other pillars, but it is also, as I mentioned, it's also a very important pillar for you to disclose in the TCFD report. For matrices and targets, most of the real estate companies disclose the matrix, the related matrices and targets, particularly for climate-related matrix, scope 1, 2, 3 greenhouse gas emissions, and also climate-related targets as well. So, so what are the most key environmental issues for real estate sectors? Is that actually when we do a ESG report, we will do a materiality assessment in order to determine what are the key or most key ESG areas that particular companies should disclose. And according to some of the research and for the different real estate industry ESG reports, it seems you can notice that the material issues are energy use and greenhouse gas emissions. Because this is because of the rising energy cost, volatile fossil fuel prices, and also the prospect of carbon regulation. And another key ESG topics for real estate industry is green building. As I mentioned, due to market demand, customers have a more expectation on the design of the buildings. For example, will there be any use of renewable energy technology used in the building, and the use of raw materials is in order to reduce the greenhouse gas emission, and also the green building environment, such as elevators that is used with higher energy efficiencies as well. And besides the building itself, customers are also more concerned about the landscape surrounding the development projects, whether the real estate developers will build up some green environment or more open space with trees or plants in order to establish a green environment for the residents. And another interesting material issues is about business ethics. For example, relating to bribery and cooperation during land acquisition and development, tender, and also significant legal, reputation, and financial costs. So according to Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, he says that what will happen to the 30-year mortgage, a key building block of finance, if lenders can't estimate the impact of climate risk over such a long timeline, and if there is no viable market for flood or fire insurance in impacted areas, this is also a key thought or a key point that all the real estate developers should think about. So as I mentioned, these are some of the common ESG topics among the property corporates. Even when you talk about, even in the Hong Kong Stock Exchange ESG reporting guidelines, and also the GRI, the Global Reporting Initiatives reporting frameworks, there are also different, similar KPI that will be used by the real estate industries. For example, environmental management, the average disclosure rate is about 44%, and also environmental data is also around 35% as well. When we talk about environmental management, it is not only about data. The real estate companies also need to disclose, we will disclose about their environmental policies, environment management policies, and also the system certifications as well. And in terms of environmental data, they will also disclose about energy consumption and conservation, wastewater discharge and reduction, waste recycling. And in terms of the social aspects, companies will also disclose about for example, human resources policies, the use of forced labor policies, up to prohibition of forced labor and child labor policies, anti-discriminations, of the health and safety policies in the real estate or construction sector. And in terms of governance, the real estate sector will also disclose about, say, for example, the separation of president and CEO, and diversity of the board, independence of the board, and also, say, independence of the remuneration, audit, and nomination committees as well. So these are the common ESG topics that will be disclosed by the ESG, or that will be disclosed by the real estate industries. So here are the ESG KPIs among property corporates. And as you can see that many real estate developers are also trying to obtain the ratings from different rating agencies. For example, the most common indexes in the market is Hang Seng ESG Index, Hang Seng Corporate Sustainability Index, the Global Real Estate Sustainability Benchmark, MSCI Index, Dow Jones Index, and Sustainalytics ESG risk ratings as well. And actually, when we talk about the risk, the index rating, many of my clients ask me a question. For example, originally I obtained a B rating for a particular index, but why I suddenly is lowered by the rating agencies to B- or C rating? Actually, when we talk about index rating, it is not only the rating is not only assigned because of your own performance. It is also a benchmarking across the industries. So what does it mean? For example, if your competitor is doing better than you. So in that case, you will receive a lower ratings as compared to your competitors. So it is when we talk about those index or ratings, it is using a relative basis rather than an absolute basis. So when we talk, I would like to give you a case study about the use of TCFD report. This is a public information, and you can read the Swire Properties Sustainable Development Report in their website. Actually, for Swire Properties, they also make reference to the TCFD. And as you can see that they also have talks about the 4 pillars, the governance, strategy, risk management, and matrix and targets as well. They, in the TCFD report, they will highlight what is their ESG governance and what is their ESG strategies. Say they will also set up targets for their future environmental protection policies as well. And as you can see for the real estate, this developer, Swire Properties identifies some of the major risks and opportunities drivers. For example, the increased market demand for climate resilient properties, increased market demand for green and energy efficient properties, also increased tenant demand for energy efficiency and data transparencies as well. Also, the growing investor demand in green and low carbon investments. And in terms of matrix and targets, you can see that the Swire Properties disclose about in terms of revenue, for example, the proportion of total attributable gross rental income by certified green buildings. And also, it also disclosed about capital and financing, that is the proportion of bond and loan facilities from green financing. And in terms of expenditure, Swire Properties also disclosed about the sustainable procurement spend, and also the expenditure on energy efficiency, low carbon projects supported by green bond proceeds. And it also disclosed about expenditures on renewable energy supported by green bond proceeds as well. So here is a real life example of the real estate developers. So I think for the real estate sectors, the most important elements of the ESG issues are relating to the building or the construction part, particularly for how to reduce the carbon emission. Handling of waste is also another important element, and also the handling of wastewater as well. And green building design is a very common topic in and nowadays. And thirdly, is about health and safety. As you understand that in the construction industry, occupational health and safety is very important. Even the government requires the real estate developers to disclose, say, for example, the number of cases of injuries and also the number of cases of fatalities during the construction process. So I also believe that the use of TCFD framework will be a trend in the future, because actually there's one dilemma is that at the global market, there's no standardized reporting framework. But as I mentioned before, climate risk is become more and more important globally, and TCFD report, which is particularly focusing on climate risk, will be there will be an increasing trend for using TCFD framework in different industries, and particularly also in the real estate industries as well. So that's all for my presentation today, and I will pass the floor back to the host. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Melissa. Now let's pass the floor to Alex.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Alex Zheng from DBS, and I run the corporate banking business for DBS in Hong Kong. I think just now both Lisa and Melissa has provided a very clear picture of the importance of sustainability and a lot of details on how the some of the industries are practicing it. I'm going to talk about it from the angle of how a bank can provide help in this area, and also more actual experience of what we are seeing today. In fact, with what's happening in the world right recently, all these flooding and fire, people started to know that this is not something that we will leave it for our next generation, but this is very, very imminent. In fact, in most of our customer meetings these days, I would say that this agenda of sustainability, climate, ESG has come up as one of the very usual topic. And corporates, not just Chinese or blue chips or even SMEs, mid caps, they are all talk about it because it's not just the company itself, it's a whole value chain. The investors are interested in it. Your business associates, business counterparties will have concern of it. The suppliers along your value chain will have concern on it. Your employee will have concern on it. Your buyers will have consumers will have concern on it. So this is something that not just that you look at it from yourself, but a whole ecosystem and value chain perspective. So just now we talk about the importance of sustainability in business, and in fact you can see that 90% of the S&P 500 index companies, they have published their sustainability and responsibility reports since 2019. And you can see that the corporations that are actively plan with climate change in mind, they secure actually 18% higher in terms of ROI than companies that do not. And we do see that 81% of consumers also prefer to buy from sustainable sellers. So all this has led to the conclusion that this is something that we should build in our DNA when we do our business. And you can see that a strong ESG proposition actually drives a value creation in 5 essential ways. Top line, which I just mentioned, that it will affect your sales. Cost reduction, because you can actually save a lot of unnecessary wastage if you put more focus in sustainability. Regulatory and legal intervention, this is very important because it may affect your license or your ability to continue to do business. And also productivity uplift, especially in terms of getting the buy-in from your employees. And later on, I will illustrate how we in DBS has actually built in this in our DNA, that every employee in the bank will put this in mind. And of course, investment and opportunities and asset optimizations. Yeah. In DBS, we have our 3 sustainability pillars. On the left, you can see that we do responsible banking. That means that we did a lot of sustainable financing, and we have the target to do 50 billion Sing dollar by 2024. And in fact, up to this moment, we have done quite a bit. In Hong Kong itself, in the last 18 months, we have close to 33 billion of sustainability-linked financing or bonds. And in fact, it's not just loans or bonds. We do swaps and so a lot of new initiatives. Trade finance, we can also build in the element of sustainability. And also, we have special privileges for our social enterprise customers in terms of when they open an account, we give them fee waivers. And in terms of consumer spending, our credit card also give discount for sustainable related consumptions. So aside from the providing responsible banking, we ourselves is also very important, put a lot of attention to responsible banking business practice ourselves, so that we manage our environmental footprint. We are aiming at reducing some of our real estate footprint in the next few years, and we do a lot of recycling of papers and all these. And we also use our rooftop of the DBS hub office to grow plants, which you will see later. And in terms of procurement, sustainability is also a very important agenda when we select our vendors, and it's a compulsory criteria for when we request for quotes and proposals. And for staff, we have Sustainability Week. We have activities like Ideation Challenge for social enterprises. So we are encouraging all our staff to participate in social enterprise, in ESG related activities. And not just, and further on top of that, we also want to create social impact in the sense that we will donate funds for social enterprises. We will help them, provide coaching for them, and we will also do a lot of volunteering work from our staff, and with a special theme on, for example, food wastage. So you can see that we look at it from a holistic perspective, not just providing financing, but doing good practices ourselves, and also we're trying to create a social impact through this. So responsible banking. So we are basically aiming at helping also to do transition financing, because we know some industries, their previous operating model is need times to switch into a more green, more sustainable environment. So we help them in decarbonization. We also help them in a change and in terms of investment. So we are not saying that we will just cut off all the coal-fired financing right at this spot, because we know it takes time for change, and there's also a lot of people whose livelihood in some countries like Indonesia are depending on coal mining. So we cannot just say that we don't do this today, but we take time for them to transit. So these are the heavily affected industries, as you see: power, chemical, metal production, oil and gas, and transportation. So what do? We provide financing solutions tailored to suit for the transition journey, and we also provide advisories. In fact, in DBS, we have ESG advisory teams that helps our customers to adapt to the changes and face the climate challenges in terms of the how to address the resources scarcity and some of the global issues like social inequality. So before we do sustainable financing, we do have our advisory team look into the company and try to help them to make sure that they will meet the standard for the sustainable financing. And we also introduced the network of subject matters to undertake evaluations that help the companies to go through the transition and select the related assets. So it's not just that we go in and do a deal and go, but it's more like a long-term relationship building with the customers along this agenda. So in fact, we are the first bank in the world to develop this sustainable and transition finance framework. So we publish this according to the taxonomy. And so this is a guide to our customers on how to adapt and build resilience to face climate changes, resource scarcity, and social inequality. So this is a very comprehensive guide to our customers, and we adopt this in our business practice. So as an example, in fact we did the first interest rate swap that is linked to the United Nations SDGs. So, and we also sponsor a lot of New World's impact movements. And so, for example, we have 200 plus actively involved partners and more than 5,000 stakeholders. So this is just one example that we and our customers, we do see this as something important, and we work together and go beyond our financing. So this is some of the examples of the sustainable financing and bonds and swaps that we did. And as Melissa has rightly pointed out, real estate, in fact, is a key sector because this affects a lot of their business going forward. So you can see that a lot of these are real estate companies. But I can tell you that there are also other examples that involve in trade finance and in other areas of financing that we are building in the sustainability element. So this DBS Foundation has been set up actually in 2014. We donated 50 million Sing dollar to champion social enterprise and help them to create social impact. And our philosophy is that a social we all know the traditional charity that you just donate money and they probably do not take too much care about whether they are viable or not, versus the traditional business. They are just donating some money to fulfill their CSR or corporate philanthropy. But we do hope that by combining these two together, for social enterprises, we hope that they are self-sustaining. That means that they are generating profit, but the profits are reinvested into the business. So these are viable business that have a longer-term sustainable future to help those that need help. So we in fact we have sent our relationship managers to help some of the social enterprise in running the business and in giving them advice on how to run a viable business operations. So instead of and every year we also select some social enterprises that we give them additional contributions. So this is two examples. Our social enterprise banking package, as I mentioned before, for designated social enterprises, we give them fee waivers and preferential interest rate for loans, and also some of the advices from our relationship managers. So far, we have over 700 social enterprises eligible for this. And then we also, our credit card, we also give privileges at some of the social enterprises for tackling some of this, offering 20% shopping discount via our DBS card for these social enterprises and their customers. And this is the DBS Foundation Grant Program that we, in Hong Kong in particular, in 2020, we have granted over 8 million to help 13 social enterprises across the society. And these are two examples. One is the Green Price supermarket that mitigate food wastage by retailing surplus or those just past the out of date goods at a big discount. And also we have Helper's Choice, which is connecting the foreign domestic workers to their employers through technology and help them for placements and also provide some of the supports. As I mentioned before, this is we are using the rooftop of some of our office premises to grow plants and vegetables, and then we donate them to. Next page, you can see that this Mango, which a lot of people knows that they provide 3 lunch boxes for those who need help. So we are providing the vegetables that we grow from our office premises to him. So I think the most important thing is that we think that banking should have a purpose. So we are not just purely driving for profit, but we do want to create impact to the society. So we support business to help them survive, but we work with our partners to put food on the tables for those needed, and we take care of our people. And so this is our logo is that we do want to do banking with a purpose, and we build this in the DNA of every one of our employees. So we are supporting the social enterprise through 100% loan guarantee through the Hong Kong government SFGS system. And we also, as I mentioned, that our relationship manager, which is the guy on the right side, he's actually went the extra mile to help handle some of the paperwork for the social enterprise. So giving them advice on how to do their business better. So food waste is something that we all know is something that we should help to mitigate and alleviate. So next slide, you can see that we are actually sponsoring this WEN for this Food Link Foundation, and in fact, every year we target to redistribute 40 tons of surplus food to help about 90,000 meals. So all these are built in our business KPI. So that means that we do not just look at profit, return to shareholders, but also our impact to the society. So that's all I have. So I just want to say that DBS has always been one of the pioneer in terms of sustainability and ESG, and it is actually built in the DNA from the group CEO to every single employee. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Melissa and Lisa, for your great sharing. So I learned a lot from today's seminar, and I believe all of us also learned a lot from today's sharing. So now we have our panel on how accounting, advisory firms, and bank can help address the challenge to achieve Hong Kong's sustainable development goals. So what about this? Let me ask Melissa a question. How can audit firms like Deloitte help listed companies to achieve ESG report assurance, and how do listed companies need to prepare for themselves?
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Actually, as you can see, for most of the blue chip companies in Hong Kong, their ESG report is being audited by audit firms, or even they have certain kind of certification. Actually, why this is important is that if the ESG report is not audited, those data disclosed in the ESG report are just management data provided by the companies. But after it is audited, this will increase the shareholders' confidence or the investors' confidence over those data that is reported. And actually what we Deloitte do is to use the ISAE 3000 limited assurance framework to do the ESG report assurance exercise. And actually, this is not, actually the assurance exercise is not mandatory under the Hong Kong listing rule, but the Hong Kong Stock Exchange used the word encourage to emphasize the importance of ESG report assurance. But we also anticipate that eventually the Hong Kong Stock Exchange will make it a mandatory in the future, because ESG report is no longer something new to the Hong Kong market. So as the Hong Kong companies gather their ESG data for a number of years, that means the data collection mechanism should be more and more mature. So for the Hong Kong listed companies, in order to prepare for the assurance exercise, first of all is they should look at the internal controls relating to the data collection process. Because as you can imagine that if a conglomerate has quite a number of subsidiaries, they need to collect the ESG data from different subsidiaries or different business segments and do the consolidation work at the group level. It's just similar to financial reporting. So the internal control surrounding the ESG data collection process is important. We should all, because under an assurance exercise, we also look at the accuracy, validity, completeness, and also the cutoff assertions of those data as well. So I hope that I can answer your question.
Yes, you do. So thank you, Lisa. Melissa, I have another question. So what are some of the best practice or pitfall listed companies can incorporate ESG in the strategic planning process to achieve concrete outcomes?
Yes, actually, there is a trend that more and more companies incorporate their incorporate ESG into their business strategies, because ESG is not a standalone exercise. It is something that should be incorporated into the enterprise-wide business strategies as well. Because as you can imagine, if you really need to reduce the carbon emission, increase the energy efficiencies, or reduce wastage, this is not something about just data disclosure. It is also about the change of your operations. So that means you need to have a strategy or a direction for your companies or your management in order to move towards that. And so as I mentioned, the United Nations has developed a Sustainable Development Goals. There are 70 goals under this program, the SDG programs. So some of the companies will select certain goals and incorporate into their business strategies. For example, environmental protection, social well-being, or even some of the companies will emphasize on employees' well-being as well. So I think besides just saying having a strategy statement, more and more companies are setting targets for those strategic actions as well. And by setting targets, it is also a very important step for the company to achieve its strategies. Because even under the latest Hong Kong listing rule requirements, it also requires the Hong Kong listed companies to set targets for environmental KPI as well. So that if you have a target, of course, you would like to achieve it. So, so this will also drive the operational changes in different companies as well. By setting targets, we normally advise companies to set a mid or long-term targets, because the change of operation is not something that you can do just in 1 year's time, because it includes the change of can be change of the operation process, the use of technology as well, and also it can also lead to the change of the supply chain. So we also we normally advise companies to set a 5 years or 10 years target.
Okay, good. So what do you see the impact of ESG on the capital market and financial market?
Yeah. So nowadays, more and more investors, or even at the capital market, will look at the ESG reports of different companies. So as mentioned by Professor before, that if you do well in ESG, it will lead you to have a lower cost of capital. For example, by raising green loans, green bonds, and also ESG funds. Take an example for banks or even some fund managers, they will incorporate ESG into their due diligence process. So in that case, they will really measure the performance of the ESG performance of the companies in order to grant them the ESG funds or loans or bonds. And it is always good for the companies to use to create some green projects that is relating to their industries. So also, as I mentioned, getting the ESG rating is also important. This is also as an indication of the performance of the companies as well. Actually, I saw a question in the chat box asking about ESG ratings. As I said, ESG ratings is more on a relative basis. It is not only about the company, the performance of your own company. It is also a benchmarking across the industries. So actually, this will create incentives for the companies to do better as compared to their peers.
All right. Thank you, Manisa. Alex, I have a question for you. What are the challenge to implement ESG and the sustainability agenda, both for DBS and for your corporate customers? And how does DBS overcome the challenge?
Yeah, I think like most of the new initiatives, the resistance to change, especially the way people are working, is usually the biggest challenge. And also when it comes to planning, then where allocation of resources. So a lot of different agendas will come out. So, but I think the key is that, as Melissa has also rightly pointed out earlier, is that the recognition of the importance by all the stakeholders and getting the buy-in of everybody is key. You have to make people believe in it before they really practice it. So, but now you can see that investors will not invest in companies that are not green. Consumers will not buy goods that are not green, or when they see a company is having a detrimental effect to the global warming, they will also trying to stay away from it. So I think the realization of the importance of sustainability and knowing that this is the only way for companies to go in the future is very important. Once you get the buy-in of all the stakeholders, then it just comes natural. As I said, right now when I see every customers, they ask about sustainability, they ask about how can they be green. So this is, I think, this is the most important thing.
So then, how do you balance between like profit making and sparing resources to create positive social and environmental impact?
In fact, I see this, and the company, we do see this as a complementary rather than contradicting. Putting resources in sustainability doesn't mean that it will undermine your profit. It may in the short term, but in the long term, as we all look at our company's strategy going down the road, in the long term, it will in fact benefit. So I think this is the most important thing to let people understand that the money you invest in sustainability, the money you invest in fact, it will help. For example, just by making people aware that they don't need to print out every hard copy by itself also actually saves a lot of money on the paper and storage space and all this. So this is a recognition and a consciousness of everybody. So I actually do not see any contradictory in between the two.
Okay, good. Thank you, Alex. So then, many financial institutions are promoting ESG nowadays. Do you think the DBS is a forerunner? And how different
definitely. I think, yeah, as I mentioned, for example, we do see this as a differentiator for us in our business proposition with our customers. So as I just said, that we are the first bank in the world to introduce this sustainable and transition finance framework and taxonomy. And also we are the first Asian bank to join the Global Renewable Energy Initiatives, the RE100. So a lot of this, in fact, the group is driving the whole bank towards this. So we do see ourselves in a good position, but we are also seeing our competitors coming in. So because and as the world is changing, so we keep on reminding ourselves that we need to do better in this area.
Okay. So Alex, how do you promote ESG among your staff, especially for the third pillar, creating social impact? When staff are all very busy and may not have spare time to help out, so how do you promote it among your staff?
But surprisingly, our staff, they do find the opportunity to participate in volunteer work, the opportunity to help social enterprises. For them, they see this as one of the value in their job. In fact, when I we interview some of the university graduates who, for MA programs. Some of them do ask, do you have chances for us to do voluntary work for the firm and all this? I do see that this is a very good trend among young people. Of course, some people there, you cannot force everybody to do that, but in general, I think people, as I said, when they believe in the purpose of the firm, when they believe that there is somewhere they can contribute to some social impact, they're happy to do that.
Okay, good. Okay, all right. So I'm sure we all know that audience have lots of questions, and I can see many questions in the chat box. Let's move on to Q&A session. So so audience are all welcome to ask question in the chat box. And let me see. So the first question. So here are the question for all the panels, like Alex, Melissa, and also Lisa. So for green and sustainability linked loan, so a typical commercial banks in Hong Kong already ready to review and offer this type of loans?
Yeah, of course. Both the green loan and sustainability linked loan have been offered by the Hong Kong banks, including the DBS, right? So they also provide several sustainable linked loans. I remember 2 months ago, the Hong Kong Land, this is a real estate company. They borrowed the sustainability linked loan from the DBS. If my memory is correct, I think it's so it's quite common currently. But for green loan, I think the market size is smaller than the sustainability linked loans in Hong Kong. Basically, the major reason is that green loans has a stricter definition in what is green loans, but the sustainability linked loans have more broader definition, and the many of the banks can offer such loans to the suitable companies, such as the real estate companies.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay.
So, okay, so I see a couple of audience, they are also concerned with small and medium enterprise and small cap. So are this type of firm required to comply all the principles and compliance?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I think sooner or later they need to build this into their business proposition because it's along the value chain, as I said. Big companies, when they buy, they need to buy from vendors who are green and sustainable and have sustainability in their agenda. Consumers also. So of course, they may see more difficulties in implementing this right now, but there is time for them to gradually adapt and change. Yeah. So it's not just for the big guys. The big guys, of course, they can obtain some sustainability or green loans with slightly cheaper pricing. But on the other hand, for mid caps and SMEs, they also need to get themselves prepared. And as I mentioned just now, there are also some trade finance facilities that are linked to sustainability, and yeah, so there is a chance for them to participate. Yeah.
Actually, not only medium or small size company. For based on my observation, many of the startup companies are also doing some particularly focusing on some green projects, or they will try to emphasize on the green or social elements of their new products. So and even these startups are using ESG as a theme to raise ESG funds as well. So this is not ESG is not something that is just for large cap companies, because as I mentioned, ESG is not only about cost; it is also about opportunities as well.
Thank you. Another question is to Melissa. So from your experience, so with regard to companies disclosing as per TCFD framework, are the matrix being used for by companies in a sector comparable, or is it the Wild West, and is there a mechanism to examine or verify that matrix are relevant based on materiality?
Yes, actually, say for example, if there are two companies in the same industry, of course, if they use the TCFD data disclosure matrix, it is comparable, because if those companies are using the same framework, it should be comparable. And in terms of how to link the matrices with materiality, is that as I said, when doing ESG reports or TCFD reports, all the companies need to do an exercise that is called the materiality assessment by using stakeholders engagement. Stakeholders engagement means that you need to engage with your internal or external stakeholders. For example, internal stakeholders are employees, management, board of directors, and external stakeholders can be customers, regulators, and investors, and to see what is the most material ESG issues for your company. Once you identify those issues, then you can also select those matrices that is relevant or linked to those issues for you to report to.
So here's the question from our audience, Bonnie, to Melissa. So apart from property corporate, so do you have the disclosure practice for tourism companies as well?
Yeah, actually for TCFD, I would say at the current stage is quite emphasized on financial sector, such as banks, fund managers, and also real estate as well. But there are also different other industries such as oil and gas and transportations, and there should be consumer business sector as well. There are also matrices relevant for non-FI industries.
Okay, so here is and then the question for Alex. So Alex, does DBS have a framework to measure sustainability impact from the green loans that DBS is issuing?
Yes, we do monitor, and we are also relying on external metrics to monitor as well. In fact, some of the, for example, some of the sustainability loans or bonds that is forward-looking. The company has to meet certain criteria before they can enjoy some, for example, interest reduction. So it's an ongoing monitoring process, not just that in day one. Of course, day one we look at what they're doing, but we continue to monitor. Yeah.
Okay. Have you come across example where Hong Kong companies work with local governments, nationally determined contribution towards SDG target and aside target that benefits their sustainability matrix and that's of government? I think this question is for yeah, feel free to answer this question. So Rakesh have the question. Yeah. Rakesh did not mention whether this question is specifically for anyone. So so anyone just feel free to share your idea.
I think for setting targets is of course government or even some countries have their targets as well. I mean, say carbon reduction targets, and but based on my observation is that most of the companies will set their own targets as well. But of course, in mainland China, for some of the SOEs, they may work together with the government to set out carbon reduction targets. For example, for the power industry as well. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Melissa. Okay, so I see Michael has a follow-up question from Alex. So do DBS also have a framework or a team to specifically monitor the compliance of ESG matrix from your customers?
As I said, we have an advisory team, to help our customers in meeting certain targets and how to do this. But unless we have a sustainable sustainability or green loan that have certain covenants that we need to measure, otherwise we won't measure their normal daily ESG matrix. But we do see that as a topic that we'll consistently discuss with them and give advice to them on that. Yeah.
Okay. Good. All right. Thank you, Alex, Melissa, Lisa, for your great sharing. And honestly, I learned a lot from today's seminar, and I believe our audience also get a lot of valuable information today. So let's pass the floor to Professor Albert Zhen for the closing remark.
And okay, actually, before we end our today's seminar, I have a question to each of our speakers, Melissa and Alex. And let's take the advantage to ask some high-level question, which is I have this puzzle all the time. For example, for Alex, I have a question for you is, do you really, you know that in the past, we don't have any so-called the CSR rating agency, right? And then suddenly it appeared, there are so many of them, the Thomson Reuters and KLDs, and then there are Sustainalytics. And so there are so many of the rating agencies. So as a financial institution, do you really care to be included as to be as a being rated, right? And then what will your operation will be truly affected by being included into the raters pool? So someone is going to monitor your performance. So what you are going to respond?
I think from our perspective, I think we don't mind being rated. You know, as MSCI, all these a lot of indexes eventually may affect your rating, affect your ability to raise money in the equity market. But I think for us, as I mentioned many times, is that it's more the purpose of the company that is important, and this is that. Because our group CEO Piyush Gupta is, in fact, when we work out what we want to be, a few years ago, we wanted to be the best bank in the world, which at the end of the day, we did get this award a few times consecutively. In fact, what we are now looking at is that we want to be the best bank in the world for a future, for a better world. That's what we say, because we do care about the world, and we do want what we do is of benefit and has social impact to the world. So because when we believe that and we have that in our DNA, then we don't mind being watched or monitored, because we believe we will do those things. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Alex. So one more question for you, Alex. Since you mentioned about a lot of companies now, including DBS, using the sustainability as one of the business KPI, Melissa also mentioned something similar. So how about the individual KPI? So do you see like in the industry, there's a trending moving toward you setting up the sustainability target into the individuals, CEOs and CFO and then managers KPI in order to ensure that this target will be achieved?
In fact, it has. We are now using this balanced scorecard approach for a long time, and in a group CEO's scorecard, in the Hong Kong CEO's scorecard, in my scorecard, in some of my people's scorecard, that we do have this sustainability agenda as one of the ingredient. Yeah, it is already there.
Okay, thank you very much, Alex. So for Melissa, so now I have a question to you as well. You mentioned that currently the CSR reporting is not mandated by the HKERC, HCC, and then we all know that actually it is a moving trend toward that mandatory requirement. And we know that on the CSR report, there are at least two parts of information. One is about what you have achieved, you have done. One is about the forward looking, which is you mentioned about the long-term and mid-term objective of the company. Every one of us, we care about the long-term and future information, but however, at the same time, we know that the future information is not verifiable at this stage. So from the auditor perspective, how do you ensure that the future information that reported by the company is reliable?
Actually, for the future information, the companies are only required to set targets. And as you know, the targets can also be changed along the time as well. When we do the ESG report assurance, we will not cover the targets part. Actually, we will only target the historical data.
Okay, yeah, that actually I think is consistent with my understanding, because the future information can be changed all the time from time to time by the company, and therefore
Yes.
it's hard to verify their accuracy.
Yes, yes.
So the next question is what is the percentage of the assurance for the CSR report from the Hong Kong company?
To my understanding, that it should be less than 10%. But on the other hand, particularly in this 1 or 2 years, and more companies have inquiries about this. And even some companies, before doing the actual assurance work, they will spend a year to do the assurance readiness work. That means it's just like a rehearsal, because once they get into the assurance year, of course they want to make it. They do not want to fail. So many of the companies spent the prior year as an assurance readiness exercise.
I see. So given that the current percentage of the assurance request is about only 10% or so, so what in your mind that you think motivate the firm to become the firm that requesting for such service?
As I mentioned before, in the capital market, even the banks or the fund managers are putting high emphasis on the ESG disclosure. So this is one of the drivers to make the company to move towards the assurance work, because this will increase the credibility of the ESG report. So this is one of the key issues. And another thing is, I also observed that from the supply chain point of view, even some of the customers are requiring the suppliers to do assurance work as well. Because when we talk about a carbon emission reduction, it is not only about your company, it is also about your suppliers. That is also about the supply chain as well. So very often, some of my clients need to provide carbon emission data to their customers.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I think that's all question that I have, because this question has been puzzling me for quite many years. And I know that a lot of CPA firms, they are actively promoting the assurance service, because that is one of the important part of revenue that are foreseeing in the future. And the company are well motivated to engage with the assurance company as well for getting a better reputation. And so please allow me to conclude this our today's seminar. And firstly, I want to thank you very much to our two outstanding speakers, Melissa and Alice, for your contribution to the our past seminar. And thank you very much, Lisa, from an academic point of view, to share about the more general level of the view toward the ESG. And I also have to want to thank you for all the attendance today, for attending the past seminar hosted by our Center of PolyU. It is without a doubt that ESG and climate change and green, the concept green, have becoming a very important topic nowadays. And then our speaker, both Melissa and Alice, have confirmed this. And then we heard about this concept from many different perspectives. And given that our objective, the objective of our center is to facilitate a better connection between academia and business world and for better knowledge sharing, and we will continue to host a such seminar and free of charge to all the professional people in Hong Kong, and to promote the Hong Kong in general, as we are the frontier of a green, the frontier of a ESG, the industry and also the society. And so we will believe that you should be able to expect to see the announcement for our forthcoming seminar very soon. And then we try to make it a physical if it is possible. And finally, representing our center, we would like to thank you for the great support from the Hong Kong IRA, and then also for our administrative staff and center assistant, Helen and Carol, for their great effort in organizing this seminar. And we hope to see every one of you in the future seminars, and again, either physical or virtual. So I think that's just conclude our seminar today. And thank you very much, Melissa, Lisa, and Alice for all the great sharing. And Chiman, do you have anything to add?
No. Thank you, Alex. Thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Lisa.
All right, it has been a great sharing, and thank you very much, everyone.